stop everything you're doing right now, because what you're about to hear has the potential to permanently alter the direction of your entire life. Not the direction you think you're heading. The actual direction, the one being shaped right now, in real time, by forces you haven't fully acknowledged yet. Most people spend their entire lives building expertise, accumulating credentials, and sharpening technical skills, completely unaware that they are leaving the single most powerful lever of human success completely untouched. That lever isn't your IQ. It isn't your work ethic. It isn't your network. At least, not in the way most people define it. It's something far more fundamental. Something that operates beneath the surface of every conversation you have, every decision you make, every relationship you build or destroy. And once you truly understand it, once you see it clearly for the first time, you will never be able to unsee it. Every interaction will look different. Every challenge will feel different. Every opportunity will become more accessible. What you're about to discover is the complete system for emotional mastery. And it starts right now. Let me ask you something that might shift everything you thought you understood about success. Have you ever observed someone walk into a space and immediately sense the entire atmosphere transform? Not because they're the loudest or the most impressive on paper, but because there's something magnetic about their presence. Have you noticed how certain individuals can dissolve tension with just a few words, while others generate conflict even when they're genuinely trying to help? Why do some people build networks that feel like family, unlocking doors you didn't even know existed, while others accumulate hundreds of contacts but remain fundamentally isolated? Here's what nobody wants to acknowledge, and it's going to sting a little. Your technical brilliance means almost nothing if you can't genuinely connect with the humans around you. That degree you worked so hard for, those certifications, that expertise you've spent years developing, they're necessary, but they're not sufficient. Not even close. The real answer, the one that separates people who thrive from people who merely survive, isn't found in your resume. It's found in your capacity to understand, navigate, and master the invisible currents of emotion that flow through every single human interaction. It's called emotional intelligence, paired with genuine social skill. And here's the truth that 99% of people are actively running from. Your entire future, every opportunity, every meaningful relationship, every moment of genuine influence will be determined not by what you know, but by how deeply you comprehend the emotional landscape of yourself and everyone around you. Most people are sleepwalking through their emotional lives. They're completely blind to the signals that are broadcasting at them from every direction. They react when they should respond. They push when they should pull. They speak when they should listen. They're tone deaf in a world that communicates primarily in emotional frequencies. And then they wonder, genuinely confused, why they keep hitting the same walls over and over again, why promotions go to less qualified individuals, why their ideas get overlooked, why their relationships feel hollow or keep falling apart. But not you. Not after today. Today you're going to learn the exact system that transforms emotional confusion into emotional mastery. You're going to discover how to read the room like a translator reads text, how to influence others without ever feeling manipulative, and how to build connections that become the foundation of everything meaningful that happens in your life. This isn't philosophy or theory. This is a practical, actionable blueprint for becoming someone people trust, follow, and genuinely want to be around. Before we dive into how to develop emotional intelligence, you need to see exactly what it's costing you right now to remain emotionally unaware. Because most people have absolutely no idea how much they're losing. Opportunities, money, relationships, and respect every single day due to their emotional blind spots. Let's start with your career because that's where the numbers become uncomfortable. You might believe that the most intelligent person gets ahead, but research demonstrates that 90% of exceptional performers possess high emotional intelligence. Meanwhile, people with average IQ scores but strong emotional awareness earn $29,000 more annually than those with high IQ but poor emotional skills. Read that again. Your inability to understand emotional dynamics, build authentic relationships, and navigate social complexity is literally costing you tens of thousands of dollars every single year. But money is just the surface. Go deeper. Every time you misread someone's emotional state, you're operating with incomplete information, like trying to navigate with a broken compass. When you can't regulate your own emotions during high-pressure moments, you're making decisions from a place of pure reaction rather than strategic thinking. When you struggle to build genuine rapport with colleagues, clients, or leaders, you're cutting yourself off from opportunities that people with stronger social awareness will capture without even trying. Consider brilliant architects who lose major projects because they couldn't read their clients' unspoken concerns. Talented therapists who struggle to build practices because they couldn't establish the emotional safety their clients needed. Entrepreneurs with revolutionary ideas who fail completely because they couldn't inspire their teams or connect with investors on an emotional level. What's the pattern? Every single one of them underestimated the sheer power of emotional intelligence. They assumed competence was enough. It's not. It never has been. Now, let's talk about your personal life, because this is where emotional intelligence becomes even more critical. Whether we're discussing romantic partnerships, deep friendships, or family dynamics, emotional awareness is the bedrock of every connection that actually matters. People with low emotional intelligence struggle with intimacy because they can't recognize or validate their partner's emotional experience. They maintain surface-level friendships because they can't generate the vulnerability required for depth. They encounter constant conflict because they're driven by their emotional reactions instead of responding with intention. Here's what actually occurs when you lack emotional intelligence in relationships. You completely miss the subtle signals that someone is hurt, frustrated, or pulling away. You say things that land wrong because you can't read the emotional temperature of the moment. You intensify arguments instead of resolving them because you're consumed by your own feelings rather than understanding theirs. You come across as selfish or insensitive even when your intentions are genuinely good. The costs accumulate relentlessly over time. Broken relationships, missed connections, profound loneliness, a reputation as someone who's difficult or exhausting to be around. And the absolute worst part, you often have no idea why these patterns keep repeating because you're operating with massive emotional blind spots you cannot see. But here's the message I need you to absorb clearly. Emotional intelligence is not genetic. It's not something you either possess or don't possess. It's a learnable, developable skill set. Every single component of emotional intelligence can be constructed through intentional practice and the right strategies. Self-awareness can be trained. Emotional regulation can be mastered. Empathy can be cultivated. Social skills can be systematically improved. Those people who seem naturally charismatic and influential, they've developed these abilities either consciously through deliberate practice or unconsciously through years of trial and error. But you don't have years to waste. You need to accelerate this process dramatically. You need a system that allows you to develop emotional intelligence rapidly and strategically. That's exactly what you're about to receive. I'm going to break down emotional intelligence into its essential components and give you practical, immediately applicable strategies for mastering each one. You're going to learn how to decode body language and micro-expressions like a behavioral analyst. You're going to discover how to maintain emotional composure under extreme pressure, like an elite performer. You're going to master influence and connection, like someone who spent decades studying human psychology. By the time you finish implementing what you learn here, you'll be operating at a level that most people never even glimpse. You'll become someone others naturally gravitate toward, genuinely listen to, and instinctively want to follow. Emotional intelligence isn't some mystical quality that you either possess or lack. It's a specific collection of skills that breaks down into 5 distinct foundations. Master these 5 foundations, and you'll wield more genuine influence than 99% of the population. Overlook them, and you'll remain stuck in mediocrity regardless of how technically brilliant you become. The first foundation is self-awareness. This is your capacity to recognize and understand your emotional states in real time. Most people are completely unconscious of their emotions. They're frustrated, but don't realize it until they've already snapped at someone. They're anxious, but mistake it for anticipation. They're hurt, but can't identify why they suddenly feel heavy. Self-awareness means developing an internal monitoring system that constantly tracks your emotional weather. It's knowing that when your chest tightens and your thoughts accelerate, you're shifting into stress mode. It's recognizing that when you start interrupting and speaking faster, you're becoming defensive. It's understanding that when you feel that hollow sensation in your stomach, you're experiencing fear or deep anxiety. But self-awareness extends far beyond just identifying emotions. It's understanding your emotional patterns, your triggers, your default reactions. Maybe you always become withdrawn when someone criticizes your work. Maybe you overcompensate with aggression when you feel vulnerable. Maybe you shut down completely when conflicts arise. Self-aware people know these patterns intimately and can catch themselves before they sabotage important moments. Here's how to develop self-awareness rapidly. First, implement what I call emotional inventory checks throughout your day. Set phone alarms every 2 hours. When the alarm sounds, pause everything and ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? What's my energy state? What's happening emotionally inside me? Don't evaluate or judge it. Simply observe it. This trains your mind to maintain conscious awareness of your internal experience. Second, Start mapping your emotional triggers systematically. Keep a detailed journal and note every time you have an intense emotional reaction. Document what happened immediately before. Who was present? What thoughts were running through your mind? Over weeks, you'll begin seeing clear patterns. You'll realize you always feel angry when people break commitments, or that you become anxious when you haven't prepared thoroughly for important meetings. Third, tune into your physical sensations because emotions manifest in your body before they reach your conscious awareness. Tension in your neck might signal stress. Tightness in your chest might indicate anxiety. A clenched jaw might reveal suppressed anger. Your body is constantly broadcasting emotional data if you learn its language. The second foundation is self-regulation. This is your ability to manage your emotions rather than being controlled by them. Self-regulation doesn't mean suppressing emotions or pretending they don't exist. It means choosing how to respond to your emotions rather than reacting automatically. People with poor self-regulation are hostages to their emotional states. When they're angry, they explode. When they're anxious, they avoid crucial conversations. When they're excited, they make reckless decisions. They're like leaves swept by emotional winds with zero conscious control over their direction. People with strong self-regulation feel their emotions fully, but they choose their responses strategically. They can feel angry, but still communicate calmly and clearly. They can feel nervous, but still take bold action. They can feel disappointed, but still maintain professionalism and composure. The key to self-regulation is expanding the space between trigger and response. Viktor Frankl expressed it perfectly. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. Most people collapse that space and react instantly. Emotionally intelligent people expand that space and respond thoughtfully. Here's a practical technique for developing self-regulation. When you feel a powerful emotion arising, use what I call the breathe method. B means become aware of what you're feeling. R means recognize it's just information, not a command. E means exhale slowly for 6 counts. A means accept the emotion without judgment. T means think about your intention. H means handle it strategically. E means engage with purpose. This process takes maybe 15 seconds, but it can prevent you from saying or doing something that damages relationships, reputations, or opportunities you've worked years to build. Another powerful self-regulation strategy is emotional reframing. Instead of viewing challenging emotions as problems to eliminate, see them as messengers bringing important information. Anger might be revealing a boundary violation. Anxiety might be alerting you to prepare more thoroughly. Disappointment might be exposing unrealistic expectations that need adjustment. When you reframe emotions as data rather than directives, you maintain much more control over your responses and choices. The third foundation is internal motivation. This isn't external motivation like salary or recognition, though those matter. This is intrinsic drive powered by your values, your purpose, and your commitment to continuous growth. Emotionally intelligent people have crystal clarity about what matters to them. They know their core values and make decisions aligned with those values rather than just chasing external validation or rewards. They're motivated by the desire to grow, to contribute meaningfully, to make genuine impact. This internal motivation makes them remarkably resilient when facing obstacles and persistently committed to long-term goals. They also possess what psychologists call a growth mindset. They see challenges as opportunities for learning rather than threats to avoid. They view failures as feedback rather than final verdicts. They believe abilities can be developed through dedicated effort and practice rather than being fixed traits you either have or lack. To develop stronger intrinsic motivation, start by clarifying your deepest values. What principles do you want guiding your decisions? What kind of person do you want to become? What impact do you want to have on the people around you? When your actions align with your values, you'll discover sustainable motivation that doesn't depend on external circumstances or other people's approval. The fourth foundation is empathy. This is your ability to understand and genuinely share the emotional experiences of others. Empathy allows you to connect with people on a profound emotional level, to see situations from their perspective, to respond to their actual needs rather than just your own agenda or assumptions. Most people believe they're empathetic, but they're actually projecting. They assume others feel exactly how they would in similar situations. True empathy requires setting aside your own emotional experience and genuinely attempting to understand someone else's internal world. Empathetic people are masters at reading emotional signals. They notice when someone's smile doesn't reach their eyes. They pick up on the subtle vocal shift that indicates frustration. They see the micro-expression that flashes across someone's face before they compose themselves. They're like emotional translators, constantly gathering data about how others are feeling. But empathy extends beyond just reading emotions accurately. It's also about responding appropriately to what you observe. Sometimes empathy means offering comfort and support. Sometimes it means giving someone space and time. Sometimes it means challenging someone with care, because that's what they truly need. The fifth foundation is social skills. This is where all the other foundations come together into practical application. Social skills are your ability to use your emotional intelligence to build authentic relationships, influence others ethically, resolve conflicts constructively, and create positive outcomes in complex social situations. People with strong social skills know how to adapt their communication style to different personalities and contexts. They can be direct with someone who appreciates straightforward communication and more diplomatic with someone who needs a gentler approach. They know when to speak and when to listen deeply, when to push forward and when to step back, when to be vulnerable and when to be strong. Social skills also include the ability to manage group dynamics effectively. Socially skilled people can read the emotional temperature of any room and adjust their approach accordingly. They can facilitate productive discussions, diffuse brewing tensions, and bring out the best in everyone present. They're often chosen for leadership roles, not because they're the most intelligent in the room, but because others trust them to manage relationships and navigate complex social situations with skill and integrity. These five foundations work together synergistically, each one reinforcing and amplifying the others. Self-awareness provides the foundation for self-regulation. Self-regulation creates space for genuine empathy. Empathy informs your social skills. Intrinsic motivation drives you to develop all of these abilities consistently over time. One of the most valuable skills you can possibly develop is the capacity to accurately read other people's emotions, intentions, and mental states. While most people stumble through social interactions missing critical emotional information that's right in front of them, masters of emotional intelligence can decode human behavior like reading a language they've studied for years. This isn't about manipulation or using people for personal benefit. It's about understanding them so deeply that you can respond in ways that create genuine mutual benefit and authentic connection. The foundation of reading people accurately is understanding that all human behavior is communication. Every gesture, every facial expression, every vocal shift is broadcasting information about someone's internal state. Most people miss this information because they're too focused on what they want to say next, or they're making assumptions based on their own perspective rather than actually observing what's happening in front of them. Let's start with facial expressions, because faces are incredibly expressive. Your face has over 40 distinct muscles, and different combinations of these muscles create unique emotional signatures that are remarkably consistent across cultures. When someone is genuinely happy, their entire face illuminates. The corners of their eyes crinkle naturally. Their cheeks lift. Their smile engages their whole face in an unmistakable way. But when someone is giving you a polite or performed smile, only their mouth moves. Their eyes remain unchanged, sometimes even slightly narrowed or guarded. Fear shows up as widened eyes, raised eyebrows, and often a slightly open mouth. Anger creates a furrowed brow, narrowed eyes, and pressed or tightened lips. Disgust involves a wrinkled nose and raised upper lip. Surprise widens the eyes dramatically and drops the jaw. Sadness droops the corners of the mouth and eyes, creating a heavy downward energy. These are universal expressions that transcend culture and language. But here's where it gets fascinating. Most emotional expressions only last for a fraction of a second before people consciously control their face and compose themselves. These micro-expressions leak through before someone decides what expression they want to show you. If you learn to catch these brief flashes, you can see what someone is genuinely feeling before they put on their social mask. To develop this skill, practice what I call comprehensive facial awareness. When you're talking with someone, instead of just making general eye contact, let your awareness expand to include their entire face. Notice the area around their eyes, the tension or relaxation in their forehead, the position and movement of their mouth. Don't stare intensely. Just expand your peripheral awareness naturally to include more visual information. Body language provides even richer information than facial expressions alone. Someone's posture reveals their confidence level, their energy state, their genuine engagement with the conversation. When someone is confident and truly engaged, they'll generally maintain upright posture, shoulders relaxed, but back, body oriented toward you. When they're insecure or disinterested, they might hunch their shoulders, cross their arms defensively, or angle their body away from you. Watch carefully for changes in body language during your conversations. If someone begins the interaction with open, relaxed posture, but gradually closes off, crossing their arms, or stepping back slightly, you've touched on something that makes them uncomfortable or defensive. If they lean forward and their gestures become more animated, you've engaged their genuine interest and curiosity. Hand gestures reveal tremendous information about internal states. When people are nervous or uncomfortable, their hand movements often become more restricted and controlled. They might clasp their hands together, put them in pockets, or hold on to something like a cup or pen for security. When they're excited or passionate, their gestures become more expansive and animated. Pay close attention to what people do with their hands when they're thinking or processing information. Some people touch their face unconsciously. Others fidget with objects. Others gesture abstractly in the air. These patterns are usually consistent for each individual. So once you learn someone's thinking patterns, you can tell when they're processing something complex or feeling uncertain about what you've said. Vocal patterns provide another rich layer of emotional intelligence data. It's not just what people say, but how they say it. Voice carries emotion in ways that words alone simply cannot convey. When someone is nervous, their voice might become higher in pitch, faster in tempo, or shakier in tone. When they're confident, their voice tends to be lower, slower, and more resonant. Listen carefully for changes in vocal patterns during your conversations. If someone's voice becomes more strained when discussing a particular topic, they might be feeling stressed or defensive about that subject. If their voice becomes more animated and energetic, they're probably genuinely interested in what you're discussing together. Volume changes also carry significant meaning. When people lower their voice, they might be sharing something they consider intimate or confidential. When they raise their voice, they might be trying to emphasize an important point, or they might be becoming frustrated or overwhelmed. The speed of speech reveals mental and emotional states clearly. Rapid speech often indicates excitement, anxiety, or the feeling that there's limited time to communicate something important. Very slow speech might indicate careful thought, fatigue, or sometimes condescension. But here's the crucial point about reading people that most amateur observers miss. You must calibrate your observations to each individual person. People have vastly different baseline behaviors. Some people are naturally more animated and expressive, while others are naturally more reserved and controlled. The key is noticing deviations from their personal baseline, rather than comparing everyone to some general standard. Context is absolutely everything when reading people. The same behavior might mean completely different things in different situations. Someone crossing their arms might indicate defensiveness in a confrontational conversation, but it might simply mean they're cold in an air-conditioned room. Someone avoiding eye contact might indicate discomfort in some contexts, but it might indicate respect, shyness, or cultural norms in others. This is why the most emotionally intelligent people are excellent at asking clarifying questions, rather than just making assumptions based on their observations. If you notice someone's body language becoming more closed off, instead of assuming they're upset with you, you might ask gently, "How are you feeling about what we've discussed so far?" This gives them an opportunity to clarify their internal state, rather than leaving you to guess incorrectly. If what you've absorbed so far has already started shifting the way you see your interactions, if you're beginning to recognize moments where you missed emotional signals or reacted instead of responded, then you're already in the 1% of people who take this seriously. Here's what the community at Elite Success Audiobooks wants to know from you. Drop the number 111 in the comments below. In quantum fields, 111 represents the activation of new awareness, a signal that your perception has expanded and a new pattern of thinking has begun. Let this community witness the exact moment your emotional intelligence journey truly started. The difference between someone who thrives under intense pressure and someone who completely crumbles isn't about talent, intelligence, or even experience. It's about emotional regulation, the ability to maintain absolute clarity, composure, and strategic thinking when emotions are running high is perhaps the single most valuable skill you can develop for both professional success and deeply fulfilling personal relationships. Most people become dramatically less effective when stakes are high and pressure intensifies. They make impulsive decisions when they're angry. They avoid crucial conversations when they're anxious. They shut down completely when they're overwhelmed. They react emotionally rather than responding strategically. This generates a vicious downward spiral where pressure leads to poor emotional management, which leads to worse outcomes, which creates even more pressure. But there's a small percentage of people who actually become more focused and effective under pressure. They're the ones who get promoted during crisis situations. They're the ones others instinctively turn to when situations become difficult or chaotic. They're the ones who build rock-solid reputations as reliable, steady, and deeply trustworthy. They've mastered the art of emotional regulation, and it transforms everything about their lives. Emotional regulation doesn't mean becoming emotionally numb or suppressing all feelings like some kind of robot. Emotions contain incredibly valuable information and energy that can be channeled productively toward your goals. The key is learning to feel emotions fully while choosing your response consciously, rather than reacting automatically like most people do. The first step in emotional regulation is recognizing your early warning signals, because everyone has them. Every person has physical and mental cues that indicate their emotional state is shifting into dangerous territory. Maybe your shoulders rise toward your ears when you start feeling stressed. Maybe your breathing becomes shallow and rapid when you're getting anxious. Maybe your jaw clenches unconsciously when you're becoming angry. Maybe your thoughts start racing uncontrollably when you're feeling overwhelmed. These early warning signals are your golden opportunity to intervene before your emotions hijack your behavior completely. Once you're in full emotional reaction mode, regulation becomes exponentially more difficult. But when you catch emotions in their early stages, you can guide them skillfully rather than being dragged around by them. Here's a powerful technique for managing emotional intensity in real time. It's called the nervous system reset, and it works by activating your parasympathetic nervous system to counteract the fight or flight response that accompanies strong emotions naturally. When you notice your early warning signals activating, immediately redirect your focus to your breathing. Take a slow, deep breath in through your nose for a count of 4. Hold it gently for a count of 4. Then exhale slowly through your mouth for a count of 6. The The longer exhale is crucial because it activates the parasympathetic nervous system and signals your brain that you're actually safe, not under threat. Repeat this breathing pattern 3 to 5 times until you feel your nervous system beginning to settle and stabilize. Next, consciously release muscle tension throughout your body, starting from the top of your head and working systematically downward. Release the tension in your forehead, your jaw, your shoulders, your arms, your chest, your abdomen, your legs. This prevents the physical tension that accompanies strong emotions from reinforcing and amplifying the emotional intensity you're experiencing. Finally, ground yourself firmly in the present moment by deliberately engaging your senses. Notice 5 things you can see around you, 4 things you can hear, 3 things you can physically feel, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. This breaks the cycle of anxious or angry thoughts and brings your awareness back to reality, rather than the dramatic story your mind is constructing about the situation. Another crucial skill for emotional regulation is cognitive reframing. This involves consciously choosing how to interpret situations rather than accepting your initial emotional reaction as the only possible truth. Your emotional response to any situation is based on the meaning you assign to what's happening, not the objective facts of what's happening. If someone criticizes your work harshly, your initial emotional response might be anger or defensiveness. But you could reframe this situation in multiple ways. Maybe they're genuinely attempting to help you improve and grow. Maybe they're having a terrible day, and it's not really about you at all. Maybe they hold a different perspective that could actually be valuable if you can move past your defensive reaction. Maybe this is an opportunity to demonstrate how gracefully you handle feedback and criticism. None of these reframes require you to pretend the criticism didn't happen or that you don't care. They simply give you options for how to respond rather than being locked into one automatic emotional reaction that might not serve you well. The most emotionally regulated people have developed the powerful habit of asking themselves, what's another way I could interpret this situation that would be more useful to me? This single question can transform your entire experience of challenging moments. Preparation is another absolutely key component of emotional regulation that most people completely overlook. If you know you're heading into a potentially emotionally charged situation, you can prepare yourself mentally and emotionally rather than just hoping for the best. Before important conversations, negotiations, or presentations, take dedicated time to anticipate potential emotional triggers and plan your responses in advance. What might the other person say that could make you defensive? How will you handle it calmly if they reject your proposal outright? What will you do if they become angry or emotional themselves? Having a clear plan for these scenarios prevents you from being caught off guard and reacting impulsively in the moment. You can also use visualization to mentally rehearse maintaining composure under pressure. Mentally, walk through challenging scenarios while practicing the breathing techniques and cognitive reframes you want to use. This builds neural pathways that make it dramatically easier to access these skills when you actually need them in real situations. The most advanced level of emotional regulation involves what psychologists call emotional granularity. This means developing a sophisticated, nuanced vocabulary for describing your emotional states, rather than just defaulting to broad categories like good or bad, happy or sad. When you can precisely identify what you're feeling, you can respond far more appropriately and effectively. There's a substantial difference between feeling disappointed and feeling betrayed. Even though both might initially register as negative feelings, disappointment might call for adjusting expectations or trying a different approach, while betrayal might require setting firm boundaries or having a direct confrontation. Similarly, there's a significant difference between feeling nervous and feeling excited. Even though they produce remarkably similar physical sensations in your body, nervousness might call for more preparation or additional support, while excitement might call for channeling that energy into peak performance and bold action. The more precisely you can identify your emotions, the more precisely you can choose your response. This level of emotional sophistication is rare, which is exactly why people who develop it hold such a significant advantage in both professional and personal situations. Confidence isn't something you're born with or without. It's not a fixed personality trait that some fortunate people have and others simply lack forever. Confidence is a skill that develops directly through competence, and social confidence specifically develops through mastering social situations systematically. Rather than just hoping you'll naturally become more comfortable over time through random exposure. Most people approach social interactions with a scarcity mindset that sabotages them from the start. They worry constantly about saying the wrong thing, making a bad impression, or being rejected. This anxiety becomes a brutal self-fulfilling prophecy because anxiety makes you genuinely less attractive, less engaging, and more likely to have negative social experiences, which reinforces the anxiety in a vicious cycle. Truly confident people approach social interactions with an abundance mindset that transforms everything. They're genuinely curious about other people. They're focused on what they can contribute to the interaction rather than what they can extract from it. They're comfortable with themselves, which makes others feel comfortable around them naturally. But here's what most people completely miss about social confidence. It's constructed through specific learnable skills, not through generic positive thinking or motivation. When you master the actual mechanics of social interaction, confidence becomes a natural byproduct rather than something you have to force or perform. The foundation of social confidence is what I call authentic self-presentation. This means knowing who you are, what you stand for, and what you bring to any interaction. Most people are so intensely focused on trying to be what they think others want them to be that they never develop a strong sense of their authentic self. Authentic self-presentation requires absolute clarity about your values, your strengths, your interests, and your perspectives. When you're clear about these things, you don't have to pretend to be someone else or constantly try to figure out what mask to wear in different situations. You can show up as yourself consistently, which creates a sense of stability and trustworthiness that others find deeply attractive. This doesn't mean being inflexible or refusing to adapt to different social contexts appropriately. It means having a strong core identity that remains consistent while your expression of that identity adapts naturally to different situations. A confident person might be more formal in a business meeting and more relaxed at a social gathering, but their core values and personality remain authentically the same. To develop authentic self-presentation, invest time, clarifying your personal brand. What 3 qualities do you want people to genuinely associate with you? What unique perspective do you bring to conversations? What value do you offer in relationships and professional interactions? When you're crystal clear about these things, you can present yourself consistently rather than trying to be a different person in every situation. The second component of social confidence is conversational competence. Most people struggle in social situations because they simply don't know how to create and sustain engaging conversations. They default to boring small talk about weather or recent events, which rarely generates meaningful connection or memorable interactions. Confident conversationalists know how to ask questions that open up genuinely interesting discussions. Instead of asking, "How are you?" which typically receives a generic, meaningless response, they might ask, "What's been the highlight of your week?" Or, "What project are you most energized about right now?" These questions invite more thoughtful and revealing responses that lead somewhere interesting. They also know how to build on what others share rather than just waiting impatiently for their turn to speak. If someone mentions they had a challenging week, a skilled conversationalist might ask what made it challenging, how they handled it, or what they learned from the experience. This demonstrates genuine interest and helps the conversation develop real depth. Master conversationalists also know how to share about themselves in ways that invite connection rather than dominating the conversation. They use what's called the disclosure reciprocity principle, sharing something about themselves at a similar level of depth to what the other person has shared. This creates a balanced exchange where both people feel heard and genuinely understood. Another crucial skill for social confidence is managing social anxiety in real time, because even competent people sometimes feel nervous in social situations, especially when stakes are high or they're meeting new people. The difference is they have effective techniques for managing that anxiety rather than being completely controlled by it. One highly effective technique is called externalization of focus. Instead of focusing on your internal experience, how you're feeling, whether you're saying the right things, what others might be thinking about you, focus externally on the other person. Become genuinely curious about their experience, their perspective, their story, their world. When you're focused on understanding and connecting with others authentically, you naturally become more engaging because people can sense that you're genuinely interested in them rather than just performing or self-monitoring. Another powerful technique is what I call social contribution framing. Instead of approaching social interactions wondering what you can receive from them, approval, connection, opportunities, validation, approach them wondering what you can contribute. How can you make others feel more at ease? How can you add genuine value to the conversation? How can you make the interaction more enjoyable for everyone involved? This reframing transforms social interactions from a performance where you're being evaluated to a service where you're contributing value. This shift in perspective naturally reduces anxiety and increases confidence because you're focused on giving rather than getting. Physical presence is another key component of social confidence that's often overlooked. Your posture, your gestures, your vocal tone all communicate confidence or lack of confidence before you even say your first word. Confident people take up appropriate space without being aggressive. They stand tall with shoulders naturally back. They make appropriate eye contact. They speak with a clear, resonant voice. But physical confidence isn't about adopting an aggressive or dominating presence that intimidates others. It's about presenting yourself as someone who belongs in the space and has valuable contributions to make. It's a relaxed alertness that shows you're engaged and present without being anxious or aggressive. Practice what's called embodied confidence by regularly checking in with your physical presentation. Are your shoulders relaxed but upright? Is your breathing deep and steady? Are you making appropriate eye contact without staring intensely? Are you speaking at a pace and volume that projects confidence without being overwhelming? The most advanced level of social confidence comes from developing what I call social leadership. This means taking responsibility for the quality of social interactions rather than passively hoping they go well. Social leaders establish the emotional tone, guide conversations toward productive directions, and help everyone involved have a genuinely better experience. Social leadership isn't about dominating conversations or always being the center of attention. It's about creating an environment where meaningful conversations can naturally happen. Sometimes this means asking great questions. Sometimes it means facilitating connections between others. Sometimes it means gracefully shifting subjects when conversations stagnate or become uncomfortable. When you develop social leadership skills, you never have to worry about awkward silence or hollow conversations because you take responsibility for creating engaging interactions. This level of social competence creates unshakable confidence because you know you can handle any social situation effectively. Now let's examine one of the most misunderstood dynamics in human interaction, the line between influence and manipulation. Understanding this distinction clearly will determine whether you build lasting relationships or burn bridges while pursuing your goals. Manipulation seeks to benefit you at the expense of others. Influence seeks to create outcomes that genuinely serve everyone involved. The most successful people in any field have mastered ethical influence, and it's absolutely a skill that can be learned systematically. The foundation of ethical influence is understanding human psychology and decision-making patterns deeply. People don't make decisions based purely on logic, no matter how strongly they believe they do. They make decisions based primarily on emotions and then justify those decisions with logic afterward. If you want to influence someone effectively, you need to connect with their emotional drivers while providing logical support for the decision you want them to make. But here's what 99% of people get completely wrong about influence. They focus intensely on what they want the other person to do, instead of understanding what the other person actually wants. They try desperately to convince people to support their idea or follow their lead, without first understanding what would genuinely motivate that person to take action. Master influencers begin by understanding the other person's values, motivations, fears, and desires deeply. They ask themselves, what does this person really care about? What problems are they trying to solve? What outcomes would make their life genuinely better? Only after they understand these deeper motivations do they craft their message strategically. Let's examine the 6 universal principles of influence that have been validated through decades of rigorous psychological research. The first principle is reciprocity. People feel compelled to return favors and gestures of goodwill. But Most people use this principle crudely, giving something small and immediately requesting something large in return. That's not influence. That's transparent manipulation. Ethical influencers use reciprocity by genuinely adding value to others' lives before they need anything in return. They share useful information freely, make helpful introductions, offer assistance during challenging times, or provide resources that solve real problems. They build a substantial foundation of goodwill over time rather than attempting immediate withdrawals. The key to using reciprocity ethically is ensuring that what you give is genuinely valuable to the other person, not just what you think should be valuable. Maybe they need industry insights. Maybe they need emotional support. Maybe they need connections to specific people. The more you understand their actual needs, the more effectively you can provide genuine value. The second principle is commitment and consistency. People have a deep psychological need to remain consistent with their previous commitments and statements. If someone declares they value innovation, they'll be more likely to support an innovative idea. If someone commits to a goal publicly, they'll be dramatically more motivated to achieve it. Skilled influencers use this principle by helping people verbally commit to values and principles that align naturally with the action they want them to take. They might ask questions like, "How important is professional development to you?" Or, "What role does teamwork play in your success?" When people articulate these values out loud, they become more committed to acting consistently with them. You can also use commitment and consistency by helping people connect their identity to the behavior you want to encourage. Instead of asking someone to try something, invite them to be something. Instead of "Would you try to arrive on time?" ask, "Are you someone who values punctuality?" People will act consistently with how they fundamentally see themselves. The third principle is social proof. People look to others, especially others they respect or identify with, to guide their own behavior. If someone sees that people like them have already embraced an idea or taken an action, they're dramatically more likely to do the same. The most effective way to use social proof is through specific, compelling stories and examples rather than vague statistics. Instead of saying, "Many successful people do this," tell the detailed story of a specific successful person who took this action and achieved the results your audience genuinely desires. Make the example as similar as possible to your audience in terms of background, challenges, or goals. You can also generate social proof by facilitating connections between the person you want to influence and others who have already made the decision you're advocating. Sometimes a 5-minute conversation with someone who's already implemented your recommendation will be infinitely more influential than hours of your own. Persuasion. The fourth principle is authority. People are influenced by those they perceive as credible experts in relevant fields. But authority isn't just about titles or credentials. It's about demonstrated expertise, proven results, and the ability to provide valuable insights that others cannot. You build authority not by telling people how knowledgeable you are, but by consistently providing valuable perspectives and accurate predictions. You build authority by helping people solve problems they couldn't resolve on their own. The key to ethical authority is ensuring that your influence is based on genuine expertise rather than false credentials or manipulation. If you don't have expertise in a particular area, acknowledge that limitation honestly and refer people to someone who does. This actually strengthens your authority because it demonstrates you're honest about your limitations. The fifth principle is liking. People are more readily influenced by people they genuinely like, and people tend to like others who are similar to them, who compliment them sincerely, and who show authentic interest in them as individuals. But this doesn't mean you should fabricate similarity or offer insincere compliments, which people can sense from miles away. The most effective way to use liking is to find genuine common ground with others. Maybe you share similar professional challenges, similar values, similar interests outside of work, or similar communication styles. When you identify these authentic similarities, emphasize them naturally in your interactions. You also increase liking by showing genuine interest in others. Ask thoughtful questions about their perspectives, their experiences, their goals. Listen actively to their responses and ask follow-up questions that demonstrate you're truly engaged. People like others who make them feel heard and genuinely understood. The sixth principle is scarcity. People value things more highly when they perceive them as rare or limited. But this principle is often misused by creating artificial urgency or false scarcity, which is unethical manipulation. Ethical influence uses real scarcity based on genuine constraints. Maybe your time really is limited and you can only work with a certain number of clients. Maybe there really are a limited number of positions available. Maybe a particular opportunity really does have a deadline that cannot be extended. When scarcity is real and honest, it's appropriate to communicate it clearly so people can make informed decisions. The key to ethical influence is combining these principles in ways that create genuine value for everyone involved. You're not attempting to trick people into doing something that's bad for them. You're helping them recognize how taking a particular action aligns perfectly with their own values, goals, and best interests. Advanced influencers also understand the tremendous power of strategic questioning. Instead of making statements that people can argue with, they ask questions that guide people to reach conclusions on their own. Questions like, what do you think would happen if, or how would it feel to achieve, or what's prevented you from exploring this before? These questions help people think through the implications of different choices without feeling pressured or manipulated. Remember, the goal of ethical influence isn't to get people to do what you want. It's to help people make decisions that truly serve their best interests, while also creating value for you. When influence is executed correctly and ethically, everyone genuinely wins. At this point in the audiobook, something significant is already shifting inside you. You can feel it. The way you're starting to reinterpret past conversations, past reactions, past moments where you now see the emotional undercurrents you were missing. That awakening, that recognition, is the exact frequency the community at Elite Success Audiobooks was built for. If you're feeling it right now, leave the number 444 in the comments below. In the language of energy and pattern, 444 represents a stable foundation being built, the signal that you are constructing something solid, structured, and lasting inside yourself. Drop it below and let this community know You're not just listening, you're building. Most people avoid difficult conversations until problems explode into full-blown crisis. They desperately hope issues will resolve themselves naturally. They worry intensely about damaging relationships, or they simply don't know how to navigate emotionally charged discussions effectively without making things significantly worse. But avoiding difficult conversations doesn't make problems disappear. It makes them exponentially worse. The ability to have productive, difficult conversations is genuinely one of the most valuable skills you can possibly develop. It's what allows you to address problems before they escalate out of control. Set clear boundaries that protect your well-being. Negotiate effectively for what you need, and maintain healthy relationships even when facing significant disagreements or conflicts. People who master this skill become the ones others turn to when situations become complex, messy, or emotionally charged. They become trusted advisors and natural leaders because people know they can handle tough situations with grace and genuine effectiveness. The biggest mistake most people make in difficult conversations is focusing obsessively on being right instead of being effective. They prepare their arguments meticulously, gather their evidence, and try desperately to prove their point. But difficult conversations aren't debates to be won through superior logic. They're problems to be solved collaboratively with mutual respect. The most successful, difficult conversations begin with the right intention clearly established. Before you even start the conversation, get crystal clear on what outcome you actually want. Do you want the other person to change their behavior? Do you want to understand their perspective more deeply? Do you want to find a mutually acceptable solution to a shared problem? Do you want to repair damage to the relationship? When you're clear on your intention, you can guide the conversation strategically toward that outcome, instead of getting sidetracked by emotions, defensiveness, or secondary issues. You can also communicate your intention explicitly at the beginning of the conversation, which helps the other person understand your goals and dramatically reduces their defensiveness. Here's the framework that works consistently for difficult conversations. I call it the CLEAR protocol. C stands for clarify your intention. L stands for listen with genuine openness. E stands for express emotions honestly. A stands for align on solutions. R stands for review commitments. Let's start with clarification. Most people either avoid preparing for difficult conversations entirely, or they prepare the wrong way by rehearsing their arguments and anticipating objections defensively. Effective preparation focuses on understanding the other person's perspective deeply and planning how to establish a safe environment for honest discussion. Before the conversation, consider thoughtfully what the other person might be thinking and feeling. What pressures are they facing? What concerns might they have? What would make this conversation feel threatening to them? What would make them more willing to engage openly and honestly? This preparation helps you approach the conversation with empathy and genuine curiosity, rather than judgment and blame. Also, prepare your emotional state carefully. Difficult conversations require you to be at your absolute best emotionally. If you're angry, stressed, or defensive, you won't be able to facilitate a productive discussion that leads anywhere meaningful. Use the emotional regulation techniques we covered earlier to ensure you're calm and centered before you begin. The listening phase is crucial for establishing the right tone and building trust. Start by creating genuine safety. Choose an appropriate setting where you won't be interrupted and where the other person will feel comfortable speaking honestly. Begin with your intention rather than your concerns or complaints. Instead of, "We need to talk about your performance," try, "I'd like to have a conversation about how we can help you be even more successful in your role." This framing immediately reduces defensiveness. Use what I call the gentle opening technique. Begin with something positive or acknowledging before addressing the difficult topic. This isn't manipulation. It's creating an emotional context that makes honest discussion far more likely. "I really value our working relationship, which is why I want to address something that's been concerning me." This approach signals that your intention is constructive, not punitive. Expressing emotions is often the phase people skip entirely, but it's absolutely essential for productive dialogue. When emotions are elevated, people can't think clearly or collaborate effectively. You need to address the emotional undercurrents directly before you can make real progress on the practical issues. This means acknowledging both your own emotions and the other person's emotions with honesty and respect. "I'm feeling frustrated about this situation, and I imagine you might be feeling frustrated too." When emotions are acknowledged openly, they lose much of their power to derail the conversation into blame or defensiveness. Listen carefully for the emotions behind the other person's words. If they say, "I can't believe you didn't tell me about this earlier," they might be feeling excluded, disrespected, or blindsided. If they say, "I don't have time for this," they might be feeling overwhelmed or undervalued. Address the emotional need directly, not just the surface statement. The alignment phase is where real progress happens. This is where you shift from discussing the problem to finding solutions collaboratively. But alignment requires genuine openness to solutions you haven't already decided on. If you've already determined exactly what the other person needs to do, you're not collaborating, you're dictating. Ask open-ended questions that invite creative thinking and mutual problem solving. What ideas do you have for addressing this? Or what would need to shift for this to work better? Or how can we prevent this kind of situation going forward? These questions engage the other person as a genuine partner in problem solving rather than a defendant in a trial. Be willing to compromise and find creative third options that neither of you initially considered. The best solutions to difficult situations often aren't what either person originally wanted. They're new possibilities that emerge when two people genuinely collaborate with mutual respect. Reviewing commitments ensures that your difficult conversation leads to real change rather than just temporary relief. Be specific about what will happen next, who will do what, and when you'll follow up. So, we're agreeing that you'll speak with your team about the new deadlines by Friday, and we'll reconnect next Monday to see how it went. Also, agree on how you'll communicate about this issue going forward. If similar situations arise, let's both commit to addressing them directly rather than letting them build. This prevents the same problems from recurring endlessly. Throughout the entire conversation, maintain what I call compassionate directness. Be clear and honest about problems and expectations, but communicate with genuine respect and care for the other person's dignity. You can be firm about standards and boundaries while still treating others as human beings with feelings and valid perspectives. Remember that difficult conversations are skills that improve dramatically with practice. The more willing you are to address issues directly and respectfully, the better you'll become at navigating these situations. And the better you become at difficult conversations, the fewer truly difficult conversations you'll need to have, because you'll address issues before they become major problems. Your network isn't just a collection of business cards or digital connections gathering dust. It's a strategic asset that can accelerate your career exponentially, unlock doors to opportunities you didn't even know existed, provide invaluable insights and perspectives, and offer genuine support during challenging times. But most people approach networking completely wrong from the start. They focus obsessively on collecting contacts instead of building genuine relationships with mutual value and authentic care. The difference between networking and relationship building is the difference between transactional interactions and meaningful connections. Networkers ask constantly, "What can this person do for me?" Relationship builders ask genuinely, "How can I add value to this person's life?" This mindset shift changes absolutely everything about how you approach professional and personal connections. Here's the truth that 99% of people don't understand about building valuable relationships. The best networking happens when you're not actively networking at all. It happens when you're genuinely interested in other people, when you're consistently helpful without keeping score, and when you're known for being someone who connects others generously and shares valuable resources freely. The foundation of strategic relationship building is what I call the value-first approach. Instead of initiating relationships by requesting help, advice, or opportunities, you start by offering something genuinely valuable. This might be industry insights, introductions to relevant people, helpful resources, or simply authentic interest in their work and challenges. But here's the key. The value you offer must be relevant and useful to them specifically, not just what you think should be valuable. This requires you to understand their goals, challenges, and interests deeply before you can identify how to help them meaningfully. Most people skip this crucial step and offer generic help that isn't actually useful to anyone. To understand how you can add value to someone's life, you need to become genuinely curious about their world. What industry are they in? What role do they serve? What challenges are they currently navigating? What goals are they working toward? What interests them outside of work? The more you understand their context, the more precisely you can offer relevant value. There are several categories of value you can provide to others. Information value includes industry insights, market trends, research findings, or early notice about relevant opportunities. Connection value means introducing them to people who could be genuinely helpful for their goals. Resource value involves sharing tools, templates, articles, or other materials that solve their real problems. Support value means being someone they can think through challenges with, or who celebrates their successes authentically. The most impactful category is opportunity value, alerting them to opportunities that align with their goals. This might be job openings, speaking opportunities, potential partnerships, or investment possibilities. People remember forever those who help them discover opportunities they wouldn't have found otherwise. Strategic relationship building also requires consistency over time. Strong relationships aren't built through single interactions. They develop through repeated positive touchpoints that demonstrate ongoing interest and genuine care. This means staying in regular contact, following up on previous conversations, and continuing to offer value across months and years. But staying in touch doesn't mean sending generic checking-in messages that feel hollow. Effective relationship maintenance involves sharing something specifically relevant to them or referencing something from your previous interactions. I came across this article about shifts in your industry and thought you might find it valuable. Or how did that project you mentioned last month turn out? The key is developing systems for relationship maintenance rather than relying on memory or sporadic impulses. Some people use simple tracking systems to monitor their important relationships and schedule regular follow-ups. Others use calendar reminders or basic spreadsheets. The specific system matters far less than having a system that ensures you don't lose touch with valuable relationships. Quality matters infinitely more than quantity in relationship building. It's far better to have strong relationships with 50 people than surface-level connections with 500. Strong relationships are constructed on mutual respect, shared experiences, and genuine care for each other's success. These are the relationships that generate real opportunities and meaningful support. To build deeper relationships, you need to move beyond professional interactions to personal connection. This doesn't mean becoming close friends with everyone in your network, but it does mean showing interest in them as complete human beings rather than just professional roles. Learn about their interests outside work. Remember details about their families. Celebrate their personal achievements genuinely. The most strategic relationship builders also understand the tremendous power of introducing others. When you connect two people who can benefit from knowing each other, you add value to both relationships simultaneously. You become known as someone who creates opportunities for others, which makes people want to include you in their networks. Be thoughtful about the introductions you make. Don't just connect anyone to everyone randomly. Consider carefully whether the introduction would be genuinely valuable to both parties. Provide context about why you think they should know each other. Follow up to see if the introduction was helpful. Quality introductions build your reputation as someone with excellent judgment about people and opportunities. Another advanced strategy is building relationships with connectors. Every industry, community, has certain people who seem to know everyone and who are generous about making introductions. Building strong relationships with these super connectors multiplies your access to broader networks exponentially. These are often people in roles like recruiting, consulting, investing, or organizing industry events. Geographic diversity in your network provides access to different opportunities and perspectives. While local relationships are important for immediate opportunities, relationships in other cities, regions, or countries can open doors that wouldn't exist otherwise. Technology makes it easier than ever to maintain relationships across distances. Also, consider building relationships across different levels of seniority and experience. Relationships with peers provide mutual support and collaboration opportunities. Relationships with more senior people provide mentorship and access to higher level possibilities. Relationships with more junior people, offer fresh perspectives and future potential as they advance in their careers. Remember that relationship building is a long-term strategy, not a short-term tactic. The relationships you build today might not provide immediate benefits, but they compound in value over time. Someone who is a peer today might be in a position to hire you, invest in your company, or provide valuable partnerships years from now. The most important principle in strategic relationship building is authenticity. People can sense intuitively when interactions are purely transactional versus genuinely caring. The strongest professional relationships develop when people trust that you're interested in their success, independent of what they can do for you. Leadership isn't about titles, positions, or authority on an organizational chart. It's about the ability to inspire others to achieve goals they couldn't accomplish on their own. The most effective leaders understand that leadership is fundamentally about human psychology and emotional intelligence, rather than just strategic planning and execution. Here's what separates true leaders from people who simply hold leadership positions. True leaders make others better. They don't just tell people what to do. They inspire people to want to do it. They don't just manage performance. They develop potential. They don't just achieve results. They build capabilities in others that last far beyond any single project or role. The foundation of inspirational leadership is what psychologists call transformational leadership. Transformational leaders help others see beyond their current limitations and inspire them to achieve more than they thought possible. They do this through 4 key behaviors: idealized influence, inspirational motivation, intellectual stimulation, and individualized consideration. Idealized influence means being the kind of person others genuinely want to follow. This isn't about being perfect or having all the answers. It's about demonstrating integrity, authenticity, and genuine care for others' success. People follow leaders they trust and respect deeply, and trust is constructed through consistent alignment between words and actions. To develop idealized influence, you must be completely honest with yourself about your own strengths and limitations. Acknowledge when you don't know something. Ask for help when you need it. Admit mistakes when you make them. This vulnerability doesn't undermine your leadership. It makes you more relatable and trustworthy. Inspirational motivation involves communicating a compelling vision of the future and helping others see how their work contributes to something meaningful. People need to understand not just what they're supposed to do, but why it matters deeply. They need to see how their individual contributions fit into a larger purpose that they find personally motivating. Effective leaders don't just describe the vision to people. They help people co-create it. They ask questions like, what would success look like for this team? Or what impact do we want to have on the people we serve? When people participate in creating the vision, they become emotionally invested in achieving it. But vision alone isn't enough. You also need to connect the vision to individual values and motivations. Different people are driven by different things. Some are motivated by achievement and recognition. Others are energized by learning and growth. Still others are inspired by service and contribution. Great leaders understand what drives each person and help them see how the team's goals align with their personal motivations. Intellectual stimulation means challenging others to think differently and approach problems from fresh perspectives. This involves asking probing questions, encouraging creative solutions, and creating an environment where people feel secure enough to suggest unconventional ideas. Many leaders discourage intellectual stimulation because they want compliance, not creativity. But the best leaders know that breakthrough results require breakthrough thinking. To provide intellectual stimulation, become comfortable with questions like, what if we tried the opposite approach? Or, what assumptions are we making that might not be accurate? Or how would someone from outside our industry solve this problem? Individualized consideration means treating each person as an individual with unique strengths, development needs, and motivations, rather than using a one-size-fits-all leadership approach. This requires you to understand each team member deeply enough to adapt your leadership style to what works best for them. Some people need detailed guidance and frequent check-ins. Others prefer broad direction and autonomy. Some respond well to public recognition. Others prefer private acknowledgement. Some learn best through doing. Others need to understand the theory before they can effectively apply it. Great leaders adjust their approach based on what each person needs to perform at their absolute best. This doesn't mean being inconsistent or holding different standards for different people. It means recognizing that different people need different types of support and communication to meet the same high standards. Your expectations for performance remain consistent, but your approach to helping people achieve those expectations varies appropriately. Another crucial aspect of leadership psychology is understanding how to influence without formal authority. Even when you hold formal leadership positions, your ability to inspire others depends more on your personal influence than your positional power. And in many situations, you need to lead even when you don't have formal authority at all. Leading without authority requires you to influence through expertise, relationships, and value creation, rather than position and title. You become someone others choose to follow because they trust your judgment, value your perspective, and believe you're genuinely committed to their success as well as the team's success. This type of leadership often involves what's called servant leadership, where your primary focus is on serving others and helping them succeed, rather than being served by them. Servant leaders ask, how can I help you be more successful? Rather than how can you help me achieve my goals? This approach builds loyalty and commitment that goes far beyond what positional authority can ever generate. Emotional contagion is another powerful leadership instrument. Emotions are contagious, especially from leaders to those they lead. If you're genuinely enthusiastic, others become more enthusiastic. If you're calm under pressure, others feel more confident. If you're optimistic about possibilities, others become more willing to take on challenges. But emotional contagion operates in both directions. If you're consistently stressed, anxious, or negative, those emotions spread throughout your entire team. This is why emotional regulation isn't just a personal skill for leaders. It's a professional responsibility. Your emotional state affects everyone around you. The most advanced leaders also understand how to create what psychologists call psychological safety. This means establishing an environment where people feel secure enough to take risks, make mistakes, ask questions, and suggest ideas without fear of punishment or humiliation. When psychological safety is strong, teams perform better because people bring their full creativity and intelligence to their work. Creating psychological safety requires you to model the behaviors you want to see. Admit when you don't know something. Ask for feedback about your own performance. Acknowledge when someone else's idea is better than yours. Respond to mistakes with curiosity rather than judgment. Ask, what can we learn from this? Instead of, who is responsible for this? Remember that leadership development is an ongoing process, not a destination. The most effective leaders are constantly learning, adapting, and strengthening their ability to inspire others. They seek feedback actively, reflect on their experiences regularly, and invest in developing their emotional intelligence and interpersonal skills continuously. Leadership is ultimately about creating positive change through other people. And when you master the psychology of leadership, you don't just achieve better results. You develop others' capabilities and create lasting positive impact that extends far beyond any individual project or goal. Right now, at this exact point in your journey, something inside you is recalibrating. The way you think about your relationships, your leadership, your network, your conversations, it's all beginning to reorganize around a deeper awareness. That reorganization is a real shift. It's not motivation, it's not inspiration, it's transformation beginning to take root. If you can feel that happening, if something in this content has genuinely moved something inside you, the Elite Success Audiobooks community wants to hear from you. Leave the number 528 in the comments below. In the field of frequency and resonance, 528 is known as the transformation frequency, the vibration associated with repair, renewal, and the beginning of lasting change. Drop it below. Let this community witness your transformation in real time. While developing emotional intelligence helps you influence others ethically, it also makes you a target for people who use emotional manipulation and psychological tactics for their own selfish benefit. Learning to recognize and defend against these tactics isn't just about protecting yourself. It's about maintaining your integrity and keeping your relationships healthy and genuinely authentic. Emotional manipulators use sophisticated psychological techniques to control others' emotions, decisions, and behaviors. They exploit fundamental human psychology for personal gain, often leaving their targets feeling confused, guilty, drained, or emotionally exhausted. But when you understand these tactics deeply, you can recognize them quickly and respond effectively without getting caught in their traps. The first category of manipulation is guilt-based manipulation. Manipulators use guilt to make you feel responsible for their emotions or circumstances, then leverage that guilt to get exactly what they want. They might say things like, "After everything I've done for you," or "If you really cared about me, you would," or "I guess I'm just not as important to you as I thought." Healthy people express their needs directly and clearly. Manipulators make you feel terrible for not anticipating their needs or for having different priorities. They frame their requests as tests of your loyalty, care, or commitment rather than simple preferences or needs. To defend against guilt-based manipulation, remember that you're not responsible for managing other people's emotions. You can care deeply about someone without being responsible for their emotional state. When someone attempts to make you feel guilty, ask yourself, is this person expressing a legitimate need, or are they trying to control my behavior through guilt? A straightforward response to guilt-based manipulation is acknowledgement without acceptance. I understand you're disappointed, and I genuinely care about you. Here's what I'm able to do in this situation. This validates their feelings without accepting responsibility for causing or resolving them. The second category is fear-based manipulation. This involves generating anxiety or insecurity to motivate compliance. Manipulators might threaten to withdraw their support, end the relationship, or create negative consequences if you don't comply with their demands. They might also manufacture artificial urgency to prevent you from thinking clearly about decisions. Fear-based manipulators often use phrases like, "If you don't do this, then," or "You have to decide right now," or "Everyone else is already doing this." They want you to make decisions based on anxiety rather than careful consideration of your actual best interests. To defend against fear-based manipulation, deliberately slow down the decision-making process. Genuinely urgent decisions are rare. Most situations that feel urgent are artificially constructed to prevent you from thinking clearly. Say something like, "I need to consider this and get back to you tomorrow." If it's truly urgent, they'll explain why clearly. If it's manipulation, they'll often become more aggressive or attempt different tactics entirely. The third category is information manipulation. This involves controlling what information you have access to, or distorting information to support their agenda. Information manipulators might withhold relevant details, present selective facts, or frame information in misleading ways. They might also use what's called gaslighting, where they make you question your own memory, perception, or judgment. They might deny saying things you clearly remember, claim events happened differently than you experienced them, or suggest that your emotional responses are inappropriate or unreasonable. To defend against information manipulation, document important conversations and decisions carefully. Keep records of what was agreed upon and when. Trust your own memory and perceptions, especially when someone consistently tells you that your recollection is wrong. Seek outside perspectives when you feel confused about what's actually happening in a situation. Another common manipulation tactic is called love bombing, followed by withdrawal. This involves showering you with excessive attention, compliments, and affection early in a relationship, then gradually withdrawing that positive attention to keep you seeking their approval. This generates an addictive cycle where you keep attempting to recreate the initial positive experience. Healthy relationships develop consistent patterns of mutual respect and care over time. Manipulative relationships are characterized by extreme highs and lows, where you never know which version of the person you're going to encounter. To recognize this pattern, pay attention to consistency over time rather than peak experiences. Someone who is genuinely caring will demonstrate that care consistently, not just when they want something from you or when you're behaving in ways they prefer. Projection is another manipulation tactic where someone accuses you of behaviors, motivations, or feelings that they're actually exhibiting themselves. Someone who lies frequently might accuse you of being dishonest. Someone who's being manipulative might claim that you're trying to manipulate them. When someone makes accusations that don't align with your experience of yourself, consider whether they might be projecting their own behavior onto you. This doesn't mean dismissing all criticism automatically, but it does mean evaluating accusations critically rather than automatically accepting them as truth. The most sophisticated manipulators use what's called intermittent reinforcement. This means providing positive responses unpredictably rather than consistently. Psychologically, this generates stronger attachment than consistent positive reinforcement because you never know when you'll receive approval. So, you keep trying harder to earn it. If you find yourself constantly working to earn someone's approval or trying to figure out what will make them pleased with you, you might be experiencing intermittent reinforcement. Healthy relationships don't require you to constantly prove your worth or walk on eggshells to maintain the other person's positive regard. To defend against manipulation generally, trust your instincts deeply when something feels off in a relationship. If you consistently feel confused, drained, guilty, or anxious after interacting with someone, pay careful attention to those feelings. Your emotional response is often the first indicator that something unhealthy is occurring. Also, maintain strong boundaries about what behavior you will and won't accept. Manipulators test boundaries gradually, pushing a little further each time to see what they can get away with. When you enforce boundaries consistently from the beginning, you prevent manipulation from escalating. Develop a support network of people who know you well and whose judgment you genuinely trust. When you're being manipulated, outside perspective can be invaluable for helping you see the situation clearly. Manipulators often attempt to isolate their targets from outside support, so maintaining these relationships is both protective and healing. Remember that defending against manipulation isn't about becoming suspicious of everyone or cynical about relationships. It's about maintaining healthy boundaries while still being open to genuine connection with others. The goal is to protect yourself from exploitation while remaining capable of authentic relationships with people who treat you with respect and care. Most people miss 90% of the emotional information available to them because they only notice obvious emotional displays. But the real masters of emotional intelligence can detect subtle shifts in mood, energy, and intention that others completely overlook. This advanced skill is called emotional calibration, and it's what separates those who can influence at the highest levels from those who remain oblivious to the emotional undercurrents that drive human behavior. Emotional calibration goes far beyond reading basic facial expressions or body language. It's about detecting micro shifts in vocal tone, noticing changes in breathing patterns, sensing energy shifts in a room, and recognizing when someone's internal state doesn't match their outward presentation. When you develop this level of sensitivity, you can respond to people's actual emotional needs rather than just what they're consciously expressing. The foundation of advanced calibration is understanding that emotions leak through multiple channels simultaneously. While someone might control their facial expression, their voice might reveal stress. While they maintain confident posture, their breathing might indicate anxiety. While their words sound enthusiastic, their energy might feel flat. Master calibrators learn to read all these channels simultaneously and notice when they're incongruent. Let's start with advanced vocal calibration. Most people listen to what's being said, but emotionally intelligent people listen to how it's being said. Voice carries emotional state in ways that words cannot conceal. When someone is genuinely excited, their voice has natural variability, energy, and resonance. When someone is performing excitement, their voice often sounds forced, with artificial inflections and inconsistent energy. Listen for micro hesitations that indicate uncertainty or internal conflict. Pay attention to subtle changes in pitch that suggest emotional shifts. Notice when someone's vocal energy doesn't match the content of what they're saying. These incongruences reveal the difference between what someone is thinking and what they're actually feeling. Breathing patterns provide another rich source of emotional data. When people are relaxed and confident, their breathing is typically deeper and more regular. When they're anxious or stressed, their breathing becomes shallower and more rapid. When they're angry or frustrated, their breathing often becomes more controlled and deliberate. You can frequently observe these breathing changes in someone's shoulders or chest movement, even when they're trying to appear completely calm. Energy calibration is perhaps the most advanced skill in emotional intelligence. This involves sensing the overall emotional atmosphere that someone generates around them. Some people radiate calm confidence that makes others feel secure. Others project anxiety that makes everyone around them feel unsettled. Still others emanate enthusiasm that energizes entire groups. To develop energy calibration, start paying attention to how you feel when you're around different people. Do you feel more energized or more drained, more confident or more uncertain? Your emotional response to others often reflects the energy they're unconsciously projecting. Advanced calibrators also notice group emotional dynamics. They can sense when a meeting has positive momentum versus when energy is declining. They notice when someone in a group is silently disagreeing, even if they haven't spoken up. They can tell when apparent consensus is actually just compliance, presented as agreement. Context calibration involves understanding how someone's emotional baseline shifts in different situations. The same person might be naturally animated in casual conversations, but more reserved in formal meetings. True calibration means understanding these contextual variations rather than assuming everyone has the same emotional patterns across all situations. One of the most valuable calibration skills is detecting incongruence between someone's conscious presentation and their unconscious emotional state. This might show up as someone who says they're fine, but whose body language suggests otherwise, or someone who claims to be enthusiastic about a project, but whose energy doesn't match their words. When you notice incongruence, resist the temptation to immediately point it out. Instead, create space for the person to express what they're genuinely feeling. You might ask open-ended questions like, "How are you really feeling about this?" Or "What concerns might you have that we haven't yet discussed?" This gives them permission to share their authentic emotional state, rather than maintaining their social facade. Emotions are contagious. This isn't just a metaphor or a nice saying. It's a biological reality backed by neuroscience. When you're around someone who's enthusiastic, you tend to feel more enthusiastic. When you're near someone who's anxious, you often start feeling anxious yourself. When you interact with someone who's calm and confident, you typically feel more centered and grounded. This phenomenon is called emotional contagion, and understanding how to leverage it ethically is one of the most powerful skills you can develop. Most people are unconscious recipients of emotional contagion. They absorb whatever emotions are prevalent in their environment without realizing what's happening. They walk into a room full of stressed people and wonder why they suddenly feel overwhelmed. They spend time with negative people and can't figure out why their mood has shifted. They're emotional sponges, absorbing whatever energy surrounds them. But emotionally intelligent people understand how to consciously manage emotional contagion in both directions. They can protect themselves from absorbing negative emotions while intentionally spreading positive emotional states. They become emotional leaders who elevate the energy of every room they enter, rather than being pulled down by whatever mood happens to be present. The science behind emotional contagion involves mirror neurons, which automatically activate when we observe others' emotions, essentially making us feel a diluted version of what they're experiencing. This happens below the level of conscious awareness and much faster than rational thought. By the time you consciously recognize someone else's emotional state, you've already begun to experience it yourself. This is why the emotional state you bring to interactions matters so tremendously. If you're genuinely enthusiastic, others will begin to feel more enthusiastic. If you're authentically calm under pressure, others will feel more centered. If you're genuinely curious and engaged, others will become more open and creative. Your emotional state becomes the foundation for the emotional tone of the entire interaction. But here's the crucial distinction. Authentic emotions are contagious, while performed emotions typically aren't. People can unconsciously sense when emotions are genuine versus staged. If you attempt to fake enthusiasm or confidence, others will pick up on the incongruence and may actually feel more suspicious or uncomfortable rather than being positively influenced. To leverage positive emotional contagion, you must first master your own emotional state. This means developing the ability to generate authentic positive emotions even in challenging circumstances. It's not about pretending everything is perfect when it isn't. It's about finding genuine reasons to feel optimistic, curious, or engaged regardless of the immediate situation. One technique for generating authentic positive emotions is called purposeful reframing. Instead of just trying to think positive thoughts, connect your current situation to something you genuinely care about deeply. If you're facing a difficult conversation, reframe it as an opportunity to strengthen the relationship. If you're dealing with a challenging project, see it as a chance to develop new capabilities. When the reframe connects to something you truly value, the resulting positive emotions will be authentic and genuinely contagious. Another powerful technique is embodied emotion generation. Your physical state influences your emotional state, and others pick up on both. If you want to feel and project confidence, adopt confident posture, breathe deeply, and move with deliberate purpose. If you want to create a sense of calm engagement, relax your facial muscles, maintain steady eye contact, and speak in measured tones. The physical adjustments will generate authentic emotional shifts that others will unconsciously mirror. Skilled emotional leaders can shift group energy by consciously introducing a different emotional tone. This doesn't mean being inappropriately cheerful during serious discussions or artificially enthusiastic about difficult news. It means bringing the emotional energy that the situation actually requires for optimal outcomes. If a group is stuck in analysis paralysis, you might introduce decisive energy by asking action-oriented questions and speaking with conviction. If a team is rushing toward a poor decision, you might slow things down by demonstrating thoughtful reflection and asking everyone to consider long-term implications. Emotional resilience isn't about being invulnerable to setbacks or immune to stress. It's about developing the ability to recover quickly from emotional challenges, learn from difficult experiences, and maintain your effectiveness even when facing adversity. In a world where change is constant and pressure is inevitable, emotional resilience is what separates those who genuinely thrive from those who merely survive. Most people assume resilience is either something you're born with or something that develops automatically through experiencing hardship. But neither of these beliefs is accurate. Resilience is a specific set of skills and mental habits that can be developed systematically. The most emotionally resilient people have learned to interpret challenges differently, manage their recovery processes more effectively, and use setbacks as opportunities for growth rather than evidence of inadequacy. The foundation of emotional resilience is what psychologists call cognitive flexibility. This means having multiple ways to interpret any situation rather than being locked into one perspective that might generate hopelessness or victimization. When resilient people face setbacks, they automatically ask questions like, "What can I learn from this? And how can this experience make me stronger?" Rather than, "Why does this always happen to me?" Cognitive flexibility goes deeper than just positive thinking. It's about developing what I call the observer self, a part of your consciousness that can step back and watch your emotional reactions without being completely consumed by them. When you're triggered, angry, disappointed, or overwhelmed, the observer self can notice these emotions without being absorbed by them. This creates space for choice rather than automatic reaction. Developing the observer self requires regular practice with mindfulness and self-reflection. Throughout your day, pause periodically to notice what you're feeling without immediately trying to change it. Ask yourself, what emotion am I experiencing right now? And what thoughts are generating this emotional state? This practice strengthens your ability to maintain perspective even during emotionally intense situations. Another crucial component of resilience is what I call emotional recovery protocols. Just as athletes have specific recovery routines after intense training, emotionally resilient people have systematic approaches for returning to baseline after emotional stress. These might include physical activities that discharge stress, reflection practices that help process experiences, or social connections that provide support and perspective. The key is having multiple recovery strategies rather than relying on a single approach. Resilience also requires what psychologists call stress inoculation. This means gradually exposing yourself to manageable levels of stress and challenge so that you build capacity for handling larger difficulties when they arise. People who avoid all discomfort and challenge often find themselves overwhelmed when inevitable difficulties occur because they haven't developed the emotional Strength to handle adversity. Stress inoculation can be built by deliberately taking on challenges that stretch your comfort zone without overwhelming you completely. Each successful navigation of moderate stress builds confidence and capacity for handling greater challenges ahead. And now, we arrive at the moment everything comes together. You've traveled through the complete architecture of emotional mastery. You understand the 5 foundations that govern every meaningful human connection. You know how to read the invisible emotional signals that most people miss entirely. You've learned how to stay grounded and composed when everything around you is shifting. You understand how to influence ethically, how to navigate conflict with skill, how to build relationships that compound in value over years and decades. You've learned to recognize manipulation and protect yourself without closing your heart. You've developed an understanding of emotional calibration, emotional contagion, and the resilience that keeps you moving forward regardless of what life places in your path. But understanding is only the beginning. And here's what separates the people who transform from the people who stay exactly where they are. It's not knowledge. It's not talent. It's not even desire. It's the decision made today, not tomorrow, to actually begin. The world will always give you reasons to wait, more information to gather, more preparation to complete, more certainty to seek before you act. But emotional mastery isn't built through waiting. It's built through doing, through one intentional conversation at a time, through one moment of choosing to respond instead of react, through one instance of genuine curiosity replacing defenseless assumptions, through one relationship invested in rather than extracted from. The people in your life are already broadcasting emotional information toward you every single day. The question is whether you're going to start receiving it or continue letting it pass by unnoticed. The opportunities that will define your next chapter are already forming around the quality of your emotional intelligence. The relationships that could change everything are already within reach, waiting for the version of you that knows how to build and sustain them. This isn't about becoming a different person. It's about becoming a more complete version of the person you already are. Emotionally intelligent people aren't superhuman. They've simply committed to developing skills that most people leave untrained their entire lives. And the research is clear. Those who develop these skills tend to experience richer relationships, greater professional success, stronger mental health, and a deeper sense of purpose and connection throughout their lives. You don't have to master everything at once. Start with one foundation, practice one technique consistently, have one conversation you've been avoiding, make one genuine connection you've been postponing. The momentum builds from there, and over time, the cumulative effect of consistent emotional practice becomes one of the most powerful forces in your life. At Elite Success Audiobooks, this is what we believe in. Not overnight transformation, not impossible standards, but the steady, compounding power of intentional growth, applied one day at a time, one interaction at a time, one choice at a time. That's how lasting mastery is built. And you've already taken the first step by being here. The life you want to build, the relationships, the influence, the inner stability, the authentic success is not reserved for a chosen few. It's available to anyone willing to do the inner work, And you've already demonstrated that willingness by making it to the end of this audiobook. So here's what comes next. Take one technique from what you've learned today and apply it before this day is over. Set one alarm for an emotional inventory check. Reframe one challenging situation. Have one honest conversation. Make one genuine contribution to someone's life without any expectation of return. These small actions, taken consistently, are what separate the people who talk about change from the people who actually live it. The journey of emotional mastery is one of the most worthwhile investments any human being can make. And it's a journey that tends to reward those who commit to it in ways that are difficult to fully describe until you're living them. Keep going, keep practicing, keep growing. This is Elite Success Audiobooks, and we'll see you in the next one. You made it to the end, and that alone puts you in a category most people never reach. But before you go, the Elite Success Audiobooks community has one final question for you. Of everything you absorbed in this audiobook, the self-awareness, the regulation, the empathy, the influence, the resilience, what landed with the most force? What shifted something real inside you? Leave the number 888 in the comments below. In the world of energy and intention, 888 represents infinite abundance, the signal that you have aligned with a path of continuous growth, expansion, and return. The number that says, what you invest in yourself multiplies. Drop 888 below and let this community witness the moment you committed to your own emotional mastery. This is where it starts. This is where everything changes.